Hello folks, this is Sula speaking. You're listening to another video for Teamfight Tactics. This one is a little bit of a special video because in my numbered sequence of TFT videos, this one is actually video number 500. When I started doing videos for TFT, I did not think that I would end up doing 500 of these videos. It's actually more videos than I did for League of Legends back in the day when I was doing League videos. But it has in fact been a full 6 years. I think it's been almost 6.5 years, getting close to, since I first started playing TFT. And I figured we'll use this opportunity to do a little bit of reflecting, talk a little bit about why I got into TFT in the first place, talk about some of the things that I like about the game, some things that I don't like about the direction the gameplay has taken, maybe a little bit of discussion about things I've learned over the course of playing this, and hopefully it'll just be a little fun opportunity to look back and think a little bit about what happened over the course of over 6 years of TFT. Now, I do have some gameplay footage in the background. This is taken from a double-up game that I played together with JDPL Grillo. I've probably played more double-up games with Grillo than anybody else over the years, and we're going to be playing a Kale game this time. We actually had the encounter where everybody gets an artifact, and out of the artifacts I had, the thing that seemed to make the most sense was playing into a Kale game. I have Wit's End here. This is not the most ideal artifact for Kale. Flicker Blade would definitely be better, but I think it's a decent enough choice. And that's going to be the gameplay footage you see in the background as Grillo plays into a Dawn? The Dawn item, I don't know what the name of that item is. Dawn something, Cogmaul. The one that causes every cast to cost less mana each time you cast. All right, well, first let's start with a little bit of story time here. How exactly did I get into Teamfight Tactics in the first place and have the opportunity to play however many, 500 videos of this particular game? Well, this goes back to League of Legends, of course, as it probably does for most people. I was one of the early adopters for League of Legends. I wasn't there in the beta. I wasn't there before the game launched. But I did start playing League of Legends fairly early on. Some of my other friends were playing the game. And I believe it was in the summer, or I think it was the summer or late fall of 2010. That was when League of Legends had officially been out for about 9 months or so. The game officially released in, I think it was October 2009, and I started playing, I think around like June of like the next year. The game was still pretty early on. There were maybe about 50 champions, which probably seems a little bit ridiculous right now. But basically, I had friends that were playing the game, and we were looking for another game to play, in large part because the people I was playing with online, we were Civ 4 players. Most of you who are watching this probably know I do a lot of stuff in the Civilization community, but we were Civ 4 players. We had done a ton of Civ 4 multiplayer. Civ 5 had come out, and we were just not big fans of Civ 5. We're kind of looking for another game to play, and the lack of popularity that we had, I know a lot of other people like Civ 5, but we did not. The lack of popularity in that regard caused us to be looking for another game, and it turns out that League of Legends was kind of just starting to explode as a game. Anyway, long story short, I played League of Legends nonstop for like the next 3+ years, played the game to death, started recording YouTube videos for it. At the time, they were pretty popular. I was routinely getting like 5,000 views per video, and some of the most popular ones could spike up close to 100,000. I think a handful of them did get over 100K views. So for a little while there was a bit of a following on League of Legends, and I actually got to do some casting for some professional games. This was before the LCS even existed, although I think they changed the name of the LCS now to something else. But this was before the formal League of Legends stuff even existed. But they were doing qualifying for IPL. I think it was IPL 4 or 5, and they needed casters to do the online only rounds, and I ended up doing some of them, which was pretty cool. But anyway, long story short, I did a lot of stuff with League of Legends, and it was not like super popular, but somewhat popular back in the day. And I ended up recording a whole bunch of these League of Legends videos. I believe I ended up with around a little over 300 League of Legends videos. And as I said, they were reasonably popular at the time. Now, because I played so much League of Legends, I burned out on League of Legends in like the worst way imaginable. By the time that Season 3 was coming to an end and we were getting ready for Season 4, I had been playing the game nonstop for almost 4 years, and I was just absolutely burned out on it. I think if you look at some of the final League videos that I did, at like the tail end of 2013, about to go into 2014, that like the passion, the excitement, the enthusiasm was just gone. I was just going through the motions, and I kind of realized I'm not really having fun here anymore. I've just played the game too much. I'm just bored of it. It's not exciting me any longer. So I stopped playing League of Legends and I stopped recording videos for it and just moved into other areas, just did other stuff. Like I streamed a whole bunch of, ended up streaming like a whole bunch of FTL, Faster Than Light, and a whole bunch of other games over the years, but just kind of stopped playing League of Legends. So a number of years went by, and in the tail end of 2018, I was like, I haven't played League of Legends in almost, now it had been another almost 4 years. I was like, I haven't played this game in like 4 years or so. What if I just went back and started playing some League of Legends again? I thought that might be fun. So I went back and started doing that, and that meant recording some more videos for League of Legends. I think I did another 30 to 40 videos of League. But, even though it had been a while, I thought that going back to the game would be more fun. It kind of wasn't that much fun anymore. There just have been changes done to the gameplay since I had last played that made it less entertaining for me. Basically, League of Legends got a lot more fast-paced. If you go back and watch when the game first came out, again, my videos from like 2010, 2011, it is a very slow-paced game. It's a very deliberate, tactical strategy game, for lack of better words. Abilities have long cooldowns. I want to use the example of release version Blitzcrank. He could cast his Rocket Fist, I think, twice before he ran out of mana. And it had like a 15-second cooldown. There was a lot of stuff like that. Lux was another champion who was infamous for running herself out of mana in the early game. So I think that Lux's her pool cost like 110 mana, and she started with like 500 mana, so you'd cast like 4 times and you'd be out. But anyway, not to say that was necessarily great. My point is more that just the gameplay was different. It was a very slow-paced game. The laning phase would often go well over 20 minutes before it kind of broke down. And by the time that I came back, everything was just like so hyper-juiced. Everything was so fast. It was like playing the Earth mode, that's like the rapid fire mode. It was like the normal game mode was now Earth mode in comparison to what I was used to. And I just found that I wasn't as good at the game anymore because like the very patient strategic decision making had been a lot of it replaced with just mash the keys as fast as possible. It was like less strategy based and more reflex based, if that made sense. I understand why the developers would do that. Like that's what the audience wanted, and the game got faster and faster and more arcadey over time. But that just wasn't what I was looking for from a game like that. I just didn't find the gameplay that enjoyable. Like, it wasn't cool that somebody would just, like, flash on top of me with an assassin and then mash all their keys, and all of a sudden I would be dead in, like, a half second. There was a little of that in the older, like, original League, but not nearly as much. It just didn't play that way to the same extent. The fights were a lot slower. And again, my reflexes are not great. I'm over 40 years old, you guys. I'm not like a 15-year-old who can hit all the buttons super fast. Again, nothing wrong with that for those who want it, but it wasn't the gameplay experience I was looking for. So I had gone back, as I said, in 2018, beginning of 2019, played League for like another 6 months, but it just wasn't the same. The magic wasn't there. I'm sure other people enjoyed it, but it wasn't the game that I had been expecting it to be, and I didn't have as much fun as I thought. So I was getting to the tail end of that. I was kind of like, I think I'm not really going to play League of Legends anymore. And then, lo and behold, what happens? Well, this spin-off game called Teamfight Tactics popped up. And I was like, well, honestly, this game, it like uses all the League of Legends characters. You like build your team is like this auto battler or auto chess. I know it's been called different things over the years. I was like, this sounds like the kind of game I would enjoy. Why don't I give this a try? And I started playing towards the end of Season 1 of TFT, which came out in 2019. So this would be around mid to late. I think this was in like the summer. I think of like, I don't know, like July, August of 2019. TFT had been out for about a month or two at that point, and it was getting close to the end of Season 1. So I was like, all right, I'll go ahead and try it. And we actually did it on one of our League of Legends game nights. We did a couple games, and I put one of them up on YouTube. And like, I had no idea what I was doing, but it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable enough that I decided to start playing more, and I kind of just swapped over from playing League of Legends into playing Teamfight Tactics, and just kind of kept playing over the years. I've played some of every single set with the one exception of set 14, which is actually the second most recent set as I'm recording this. I just didn't see anything in that set that interested me, but I have played every other set to at least some extent, if not all the half sets. So I've kind of seen a lot of things come and go over the years for TFT. Oh, while we're on the subject of old TFT sets, I want to just mention this. Set 2 of TFT kind of has this reputation of being like the worst TFT set of all time. People say like, oh, set 2 almost killed TFT. I think that's really unfair, and like I don't want to get up on the soapbox for set 2, but I actually really don't think it was that bad of a set at all. I think in particular, viewed in the context of the time, right when the game came out, I think it was pretty good, honestly. I think it was better than set 1, even though it wasn't as popular as set 1. What's happening with set 2, and the reason why it gets such a bad reputation, is there was a very, very unrealistic expectation of what TFT was going to be. When set 1 came out, it put up just these insane numbers. There'd be like 100, there'd be like 100,000 concurrent players, and there'd be like hundreds of thousands of people watching on Twitch. And so people kind of thought that like that's what TFT was going to be. And TFT was never going to be that popular. It was a fad that popped up and then it went away. Like I said, the game was never going to be that popular. And because like the numbers started falling off really hard in set 2, people were like, oh, well, set 2 was terrible. No, set 2 wasn't terrible. Set 2 was TFT going back to its actual numbers after like this very unrealistic bubble that was there in set 1. So set 2 kind of got the blame for TFT not actually being the like super popular new esport. And that reputation is just kind of stuck around very unfairly in my mind. I liked set 2. I thought it was a pretty good set. But it has this reputation as being not very good. I mean, there was some bad stuff. There was Blender Nocturne, which was pretty bad. But overall, considering it was the very second set, I think it was a pretty good one. My opinion on what sets were bad were ones that like had when the game had been out for a long time and it still delivered a pretty crummy set. Like set 5 with the shadow items was a pretty bad set. I also think set 8.5 was really bad, which is why I skipped that one. And set 9 and set 9.5 were pretty bad as well. In particular, set 9.5 was unacceptably bad, considering the game had been out for like 4 years at that point. So I reserve much more ire for them than for set 2, where the developers didn't really know what they were doing. And there was a lot of cool stuff in that set that was done for the first time. So kudos to set 2. People have given it an unfairly bad reputation. All right, anyway, that's getting aside, very much sidetracked, but it's my video, so people can kind of say whatever I want here. As far as stuff I did want to focus on, let me try to spend a little time talking about some of the things I like about TFT, because obviously there are things I enjoy about this game if I am still playing it after 6+ years and after recording 500 videos or whatever for this game. I think the core gameplay of TFT is really good, and that's like my most basic point. I think that the actual, distilled down to its essence, core gameplay is really, really good, and I think it's hard to mess that up. At its core, this is a game where you're trying to build a team. You know, you've got this pool of different champions. They all have different abilities. They all have different traits and whatnot. You try to build your team out of it, and you're not guaranteed what you're going to find. Every game, you're going to get different champions in your shop, and you're going to get different items, and you're going to be up against different teams, because what you're up against also is going to influence how you build your team. So like all this stuff is going to change from game to game based on randomness. And like that core gameplay of I'm hitting these units, I'm gonna play this team comp, or I have the components to make this item at the start of the game. I'm gonna build my team around that, and then I need to play around the randomness that I'm getting in the store, in the shop, from items, from drops, from my opponents. That gameplay is fantastic, and like the core gameplay of TMT is really, really good, and it's what always keeps me coming back to this game over and over again. The feeling of when you can put that team together just perfectly and then win out like the last 4 or 5 rounds to win a game, it's just a great feeling. And like I look back at the team I built and I'm like, I feel proud of my team. That might be a kind of a silly thing to say, but I do feel that way sometimes. Like, I put these champs together. They're working together beautifully. It's a good feeling, and it makes for fun gameplay. So I think that is always the essence of what it's striving for. TFT is always at its best when the game is controlled randomness. It's always at its worst when people are hard forcing things that are overpowered. When people are playing around the hand they're dealt and just like adjusting to what they get on the fly. That is the essence of what makes for TFT, and it makes for great gameplay. There's a lot of replayability here, and it's been enough to keep me coming back to this game over and over and over again over the years. I also will give an additional shout out to Double Up, the game mode. I don't know if I would still be playing TFT if it weren't for the Double Up game mode. I just love this game mode. You can see most of my time is spent playing this game. It just adds an extra layer of decision making of not only are you managing your board, you also need to coordinate with your partner as well. And the game mode really, really favors cooperation. I like some of the changes that have been added over the years to improve on that. The way that they've added the cannon, I think in set 14 they added that, where you basically have an unlimited number of champion sends to your partner, but they're on a cooldown, so you really want to make use of them frequently, but also wisely. Like sometimes it's better off to send a cheaper champion because it's a lesser cooldown, as opposed to a 4 or 5 cost champ that has a 5-round cooldown. You can also trade item components with your partner, so it's important to be talking about that. And you need to manage your teams because you don't want to run teams that are going to conflict with each other on the same champs. So it's just a great, great decision-making game mode. By the way, I finally get a rage blade for Kale on this background gameplay. Was trying to get that all of stage 2 and stage 3. But it's just a fantastic game mode. And the coordination with your partner just is so much fun. It keeps me coming back again and again and again to this particular game mode. And we even are doing group games on Fridays because they've added custom double up lobbies. I don't know if I would still be playing the game if they had not had this game mode, because the one-player mode is fine, but it's just so much more fun to play with a partner. Why the competitive scene is not featuring double up is absolutely beyond me, because I think it would be extremely exciting to watch people play this in teams as opposed to it always being individuals. All right, well, as I said, the core gameplay, I think, of TFT is great. It keeps me coming back to the game over and over again. There are things that I do not like about TFT, and these are not complaints specific to like this set 15, this patch, blah, blah, blah. I've got a whole bunch of other videos where I'll talk about the specific patch. We're trying to keep things high level here. Things I don't like about TFT. Some of these are long-running issues I've mentioned a million times, but I do feel like since we're doing a kind of an overview summary video, it's a good place to talk about some of them. The first one, and one that I've been griping about literally for half a decade at this point, is just the patching. The patching is out of control for this game. It always has been. It drives me crazy why the patching is the way that it is. This game patches at an absolutely astronomical rate, a way that is not healthy, I would argue, for the gameplay. There's a patch every 2 weeks, and frankly, it's not even every 2 weeks. It's often a lot more frequent than that. It's quite common to have patches. The official patches come out every 2 weeks, but then on top of that, you will then be getting the B-Pit patches and the hotfix patches. This set, when set 15 released, had, I think it was 4 patches in the first 2 weeks, which is just utterly insane. Like, you can't patch, like, they had the official patch, and then a hotfix patch, and then another hotfix patch, and then another hotfix patch. Like, you can't patch a game that much. It's just too difficult to keep up with the gameplay unless you're an obsessive that like does nothing but play the game all day. It's just too much. You can't do that many patches. You're losing too many people when you do something like that. By the way, this Kale roll down not going. Kale roll down also losing people, not going the way I wanted, but at least I did finally manage to hit the champion there at the cost of spending an awful lot of econ that I didn't want. It would be one thing also if the patches had like minor balance changes, but they do not. The patches for this game frequently will shift around like, I don't know, 20, 30, 50, 70 things in the patch notes. They'll change around like 20 champions, 8 traits, 15 augments, and 30 power-ups all in one patch. Like, how is anyone supposed to keep track of that? It's very clear that the patches are geared around the diehard players, the people who sit down and play games all day, every day, just on and on and on and on. And I don't think that that's very healthy for the gameplay. I understand why they do it, because these are the kind of people who spend the most money, and it's all about the monetization, which we're going to talk more about in a minute. But I do think that that's a huge problem, that the gameplay is very obviously balanced around these people, and the notion is you have to have new stuff constantly, like over and over and over again. You have to have new stuff because you got to keep their attention span up so that they'll keep spending money on the game and keep buying more stuff in the shop, more champions, more of the little legends, more of everything. So that's what's frustrating about this, that the game is patched way too often to the point where, like I'd say, I hate to use the term, but it feels like normal people cannot keep pace with this. And the game is just based around diehards. That has been a long-standing complaint of mine, and it actually does drive me away from playing the game some of the time. Particularly when I know a patch is about to come out in like 2 days, I'm like, well, there's no point in playing the game. There's going to be another patch in 2 days, and every single thing in the game is going to change. Like, why? What is the point of playing this any longer? So I think that this game patches way too much, and I don't think that it's healthy for the gameplay. And I've been on that high horse for years now, but it's obviously not going to change. A related note is the gameplay has gotten too bloated. There's no getting around this. There's just too much going on in the gameplay now. It's overstuffed. There is too much junk in the gameplay to a degree that is getting pretty unhealthy for Teamfight Tactics. This is the same thing that happened to League of Legends, by the way. It just got way too over bloated with just too much stuff going on at any one moment in time, and it certainly happened to TFT as well. If you go back and look at the gameplay from the first couple sets, like I have videos from pretty much every single set, so if you look back at the gameplay footage from like set 2 or set 3 or set 4, it is remarkable how much less stuff there is in the game as compared to now. Again, you have always had the champions, the traits, and the items, but like think how much more complicated they've gotten over time. Even the items alone, it wasn't enough just to have the same items as before. We had to add frying pans in addition to spatulas, and then we also have artifact items, and then we also have radiant versions of every item, and then we have item removers, and then we have item reforgers. Like, we have all this stuff. More and more and more and more stuff. It just gets so complicated. And that's just on those core features, as I said, champions, traits, and items. There's been so many other things added as well. Obviously, we've had the augments at set 6. And again, I think the augments are a good addition to the gameplay, but it's another lever that has to be balanced by the developers. By the way, I desperately wanted to get this spatula here, which apparently this spatula somehow sticks around, but nope, it's on the wrong side of the carousel. That would have let me play 6 rates without finding Varus, so that would have been a very nice pickup, but sadly I do not get the spatula. So like I said, there's just all of these different levers to the gameplay that have been getting added, and part of the problem is they're really hard to balance, and the developers have not done a good job of this. Because there's so many things in the gameplay right now, it's just become almost impossible to balance everything that's going on in the game. And so that led to some very shaky balancing. It also has created a huge burden of knowledge problem. Now, that's a term that's often applied in like game theory stuff, but it basically means that the game's just getting too complicated and it's driving people away because there's too much stuff and it's too hard to keep track of everything. Again, as I said before, the game is being too balanced around the hardcore people who sit down and play the game for 10 hours every day, which is not the average user experience. So a great example of this are the artifact items. For example, there's a sniper's focus over there on this Ashe player. The artifact items are a classic example of bad gameplay design. There are so many of these things. I think there's 35 artifact items, and most of them are terrible on most champions. Like, you put them on, you grab a random artifact, you put it on a random champion, it's actually going to be quite bad in the vast majority of circumstances. But in like 2% of the circumstances, you get a broken interaction that is way too strong and swings things badly out of proportion for the rest of the gameplay. An example of that would be like Malzahar. Malzahar is a strong champ in this particular patch, but you put Blading Jewel on him, and all of a sudden he becomes this like unkillable, or well, not unkillable, but like this ridiculous damage monster, because Blading Jewel deals damage based on ticking damage over time effects, and that's what Malz has. So like, if you have to like memorize that this one artifact is broken on Malzahar, and there's like a dozen of those different things, but like trying to memorize which artifact is broken on which champion, which again, you'll probably see an artifact like once every 2 or 3 games. So like, you'll only see each artifact once or twice the entire set, even if you play a lot of games. It just creates this ridiculous problem where you have to memorize so many combinations of so many different things. It just makes it really, really difficult to play the game. And again, it favors the diehards over everyone else in a way that's not fun. Like, it shouldn't be a requirement to have to memorize all of these artifact interactions to play the game, or else you're hugely penalized against those who do. Like, obviously there's some knowledge you have to pick up to play the game, but like, that is so intricate and rare. it's not the kind of thing that your typical player should have to memorize to play the game. It's really silly. And there's just examples of stuff like that all throughout the game. The set mechanic here in set 15, the power-ups, like they're kind of cool. I like them at first. They have kind of staled on me over time because it's another example of a burden of knowledge problem. You have to memorize which power-ups are overpowered on which champion because guess what? They're not balanced at all. I mean, and it's not shocking that they're not balanced because there's just too many things for the developers to balance right now. There's too many plates spinning up in the air and they can't keep track of them all. So that's a real issue that there's just like so much junk going on in the game right now. They can't keep track of it. And I don't like having to memorize, oh, this champion needs this power up. If you don't get that, then they're useless. This champion needs that power up. If you don't get the power up, then they're useless. Like having to do that over and over and over again for every champion in the game is just ridiculously tedious. It's not fun. So it's all reflects back to the fact that the gameplay is too overstuffed. There's too much bloat in this gameplay. And I really feel like the gameplay would improve if they just stripped out a lot of this. The artifact items in particular are just not necessary. You already have normal items and radiant items. Why do you need artifact items as well? It just seems completely superfluous and unnecessary. So I don't think that that's needed, or at the very least, trim back the artifact list. Who in their world needs 35 of these things? It's ridiculous. Have like a dozen of them and you'll be fine. The radiant items plus the normal items are plenty. So anyway, as I said, I don't mean to keep you ranting here, but like there's just too much gonzo nonsense taking place in this game. Like, look at this. They're in the double up gift round. We get to look at these options to give to Grillo here. Artifact Anvil Masterwork Upgrader 30 gold. This is my one complaint about double up. The gift rounds are too strong. I wish that we did not have the super strong gift rounds because like the amount of randomness injected by these gift rounds is really, really stupid because like Grillo just got a radiant item for free. Like that's the equivalent of a prismatic augment that he just got like out of nothing right there. That's just too much power being injected for a random gift round. So I love double up, but the gift rounds are too strong. And ugh. If I have one other thing I want to mention in terms of things that I do not like, this is not a surprise, but the monetization elements of TFT are also getting out of hand. Too much focus on monetization is a real problem for the game as well. Obviously, they introduced the Little Legend chibis or whatever. I think that was back in set 6, or it was at set 5 or set 6 that these were first introduced. I don't care that they exist. I don't love them. I actually think that they look really stupid. I hate the fact that they destroyed the aesthetic of the Little Legends for TFT. Traditionally, there was like a very clear aesthetic that the Little Legends had, and the chibis completely ruined that. So now it's just random nonsense that doesn't look anything alike. But it's like, fine, whatever. If you, by the way, I get the 3% Varus here, which is a humongous high roll. So hooray for that. After I finally lost a round. I get it. It's a game. They have to make money. I get it. So I can live with it. By the way, the other half of the TFT gift round gave me a Tactician's Crown. Nothing I can do about that. Everybody got a Tactician's Crown. So I'll just play 2 Varuses here for the time being. I understand they have to make money, blah, blah, blah. People say, well, it doesn't hurt you to have the, have these monetization elements. But I actually disagree. I think it does hurt the gameplay that the monetization keeps getting worse. The introduction of these little legends that cost, they're like ridiculously hard to get. You have to like roll 100 times in the gambling store to get them, and that's a whole nother problem. But the existence of these things, I think, really do create perverse incentives for the gameplay. And the reason for that is it goes back to the balancing. I said the balancing is balanced around people who play the game all day, every day. And the reason why it's balanced around them is they need to keep those people happy, so they keep spending absurd amounts of money on these $100 little legends or whatnot. So yes, it actually does affect the gameplay because the game is being designed to cater around people who sit around all day and then will spend like $100 on a little legend. So like, yes, that actually does affect the gameplay because they're the ones who are being catered to in terms of how the game is designed. So I do think that that's a problem, and I don't love the fact that you seem to be getting less and less for less and less bang for your buck as the gameplay has gone along. The battle passes that have been around since the very beginning of the set, now instead of having 1 battle pass, there's 2 battle passes per set. So you get less value there, and each one has less in it as well. They used to be a pretty good value. I think I got them for almost every set from like set 4 through like set 9 or so because they were a good value. You would get like, I don't know, a bunch of, I think you would get 4 stages on a bunch of them, the background stages. You'd get 3 of them, and then there'd be, that were like different palette swaps of one another, and then there'd be like one final one that was special. Like that was good value for $10. Now you don't get much of anything. You get 1 stage for paying it. And then there's 2 battle passes, and not even 1 battle pass, there's 2 of them. So the value is like not there. It's a much worse value than it used to be. And everything is gated behind the whales that will sit down and spend like $1,000 on TFT every couple of months. That's not healthy for your game. It doesn't make for a good player experience, and it's unhealthy. It lends the impression of the designers are trying to extract as much revenue as possible from a dwindling fan base before it goes away. And as I said, I do not think that's a healthy place for the game to be. So the monetization keeps getting worse, and I'm not a big fan of that direction. I have very serious concerns about the long-term direction of where TFT is going, because it just feels like it's getting more and more insular, catering only to its like diehard players, and I'm not convinced it's bringing in new players at this stage. And that is always like a death. That's always like the death knell for games, is when they stop attracting new players, and they're just based on cannibalizing more and more money from its existing players. So I am concerned about the long-term future of this game, but it has been around for a while, so it's a very cheap game to make. So there's good odds it'll stick around, but I don't particularly love the direction that the gameplay is going in at the moment. All right, well, we're getting closer to the end of this video. One of the teams is already knocked out, and there's just another team's on 1 HP, and we're kind of dueling with this team on 18 HP. So I figure I'll end this on a more positive note and talk about some of the things I think I've learned just by playing TFT a lot over 6 years. I would never pretend that I'm an expert at this game. I do think that if I sat down and played, I don't know, 300 games, I could probably make it to Masters in the single player mode. I've never made it there. I've never played past Diamond, and the biggest reason I just don't have time to play that many games. But I do think if I sat down and played several hundred games, I could make it to Masters tier. I just have not had the time or really the desire to do that. I don't really find grinding solo queue games to be fun. Still, I do think that I'm a pretty solid player at this game. I think that I could make it into like that top 1 to 2% of the player base, just because I've played the game a lot and have a lot of experience here. So I do think that there's things I've learned over time, and I'll try to highlight what some of them are here. First one I put down was I do think I've gotten a lot better at using items. By the way, as we get a top 2 finish here, it uses the top 4 graphic from the single player mode. I do think I've gotten a lot better at items over the years. And that was one thing I noticed when I look back at some of the earlier videos I did. I had this habit of just whatever item components I would get, I would immediately slam into an item like over and over and over again. And the truth is, that's not the worst habit to have, because newcomer players often make a mistake by having like 8 components sit on their bench and not do anything. And just sit there and sit there and sit there instead of getting the power budget from those items. But despite that fact, I had the opposite problem. I would overslam items, and I think I've gotten a lot better at that. One thing you really want to think about is what items your team component needs and which ones your team component kind of doesn't need so much. Like for this team component, this team composition, I desperately needed rods. Like Kale needs a Rage Blade to function. If she doesn't have a Rage Blade, then like she's just not even a unit. So it's very important. It was very important to build the board around that. And don't kill a rod unless it's being used for Kale's most important item. And that differs from like if you have an auto-attacking based team composition that doesn't need rods, and it's like, okay, sure, go ahead, toss the rod into like a crown guard for front line, that sort of thing. But it is very important to try and make the items that you know your team needs, while like also understanding that there's other places where you can kind of like slam whatever. Like this team can kind of use whatever front line. It's not super important. There are some items that are like better on Zac than other items, but it's not super important. Zac can kind of use just like generic tank items, whereas Kale actually does need very specific itemization. Similarly, Malzahar, who's like the secondary carry on this board, does actually have somewhat specific items. He really wants Morello's blue buff, and then he'd like a Void Staff, but I have the Ionic Spark, so it's not as important for him to have the Void Staff. So yeah, that kind of thing. I do think I've just gotten a lot better at using items in general and not just slamming the first one I see in every game. Also, in terms of my leveling patterns, when I first started playing the game, I always played the same way. I would just always rush to like level 8 or level 9 ASAP and play a board that's based around 4-cost units. Like I would always do that every time. 4-cost, 5-cost units. Get the more expensive units. They are the better units. So go and play them. And I did learn over time that there are other ways you can play the game. I mean, going fast 8, fast 9, and playing 4 and 5-cost units is perfectly valid, and it's still my favorite way to play the game. But there's other ways to play the game. You don't have to play that way. Like, reroll comps do have their place in the game because it's actually healthy for the gameplay that people have, like, different gameplay patterns. If everyone is rushing 9 every game, it's not healthy. So I've gotten a lot better at reroll game teams over the years, and this is a good example of a reroll game that I think went pretty well, understanding where you have to push and like where you want to roll down, that sort of thing. And then finally, one other thing is patience. I think I've gotten more patient over the years as well. This game was a good example of that. Like, we pretty much lost every round stage 5. And like the temptation was just like to get antsy, to start rolling more gold or like to level faster. But it was like, no. We have lots of health here. We don't need to burn through our health. We can take our time. The goal for this board is we have to get to level 9. And we have to get the level 9 Kale upgrade, and then we need to get 2-star Varus, and then play like more utility support units. Like I have a Braum in there and a Zyra. So I think that this was a good example of being patient, not rushing the result. And it worked out pretty well because throughout the mid game, we were struggling with these boards. We have the Zyra Rakan board here with the Flicker Blade. And like that board was just bowling me over on stage 5. But like now I've upgraded my board. I'm level 9. I've been able to 2-star all the 5 costs I need. And like my board has just outscaled them. So like I knew I would outscale this board. Just had to be patient. And that's exactly what happens. And it's going to deliver a first place finish for this game on a very nicely played game here together with Grillo. So those are just some reflections here. This might seem a little bit of a scattershot video, but I hope it was entertaining to listen to. We've done 500 videos. Are we going to do another 500 videos? I mean, who knows? It's hard to say what the future predicts. Maybe if this game is still around another half decade from now, we'll be hitting video 1000. I have no idea. As long as the game is fun, I'll keep playing it. In any case, though, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this one. Until next time, take care, folks. Have a great week, and I will see you again soon.